So we're just bringing our awareness to the breath at the beginning. So again, just seated however you're comfortable, hands in the lap or on the knees, gaze downwards or eyes closed. And I just want you to notice where you feel your breath in your body. So there's no right or wrong answers. You might feel the breath in the nostrils, the throat, the shoulders, the chest. Maybe you feel it in the front of the chest or the back of the chest. Maybe you feel the breath in the ribs or the abdomen, or maybe you feel the breath somewhere completely different. Again, there's no right or wrong answers. You're just noticing where you feel your breath. And noticing the movement of the breath in the body. Where there's any expansion on the inhales, or if there's pulling in on the inhales. And what the exhales feel like, where the exhale begins, where it ends. Just so you know where the breath is starting from before we do all of our breath work. Noticing the qualities of the breath. Maybe the breath is shallow or raspy or ragged or fast. Maybe it's slow. Maybe it's wide or long. Again, there's no right or wrong. What does your breath feel like right now? And then notice if you're holding anywhere. Sometimes we like to hold the body in. We clench the jaw, so see if you can allow the bottom row of teeth to just soften away from the top row of teeth. You can think about exhaling and either opening the mouth and breathing out of the mouth, or just letting that jaw drop as you exhale. Notice if the shoulders are clenched up forward or up towards the ears. And again, on the exhale, you can just think about letting them soften and maybe rolling them just back slightly. Notice if there's any holding in around the ribs or the abdomen. And again, on an exhale, you can think about letting everything soften and drop. And now when our diaphragm is working optimally, on our inhale, it contracts and moves down, so the ribs want to open wide. So as we breathe in, we want to feel the rib cage open. You can even place one or both hands on the sides of the ribs. And think inhale, open the ribs, and exhale, soften the ribs. Inhale, open the ribs, and exhale, soften the ribs. And see if you can take that all the way around. So not just in the front of the ribs or the sides, but also in towards the back of the ribs. So you can even move your hands around the rib cage and feel that. Inhale, open the ribs. Exhale, soften the ribs. And just finding your own pace of breath that feels comfortable for you. So we want to think inhale, create space, and then exhale, soften. And then see if you can start to take that a little bit more below the rib cage. So just above the belly button, wrapping around like a corset, that top layer of core muscles. Inhale, expanding around the front, the sides, the back, and then just exhale and soften. So when our diaphragm muscle contracts on the inhale and it moves down, it creates this vacuum, drawing breath into the lungs. And the more we can allow the ribs and the core muscles to lengthen and stretch as we do that on the inhale, the more we'll draw the breath down into the bottom of the lungs, the biggest part of our lungs, taking a deeper breath in and optimizing that space for the breath, working that big breathing muscle, that diaphragm muscle. So again, we want to think inhale, create space, open up, and then exhale, soften. And then see if you can take that around the belly button. So right around the belly button, right around the waist, all the way around the back. Inhale, open, and then exhale, soften. Inhale, open. Exhale, soften. So you can think like you've got an inner tube around the middle of your waist, right around the belly button, and you want to fill it up all the way around. So you can think about the breath kind of coming away from the spine, and then exhale and soften those muscles. And they kind of just gently draw inwards on their own. Inhale, open. Exhale, soften. You can breathe out through the nose or the mouth. And then we'll take that just a little bit below the belly button now. All the way around. Inhale, open. Exhale, soften. And as you practice this breath more and more and you become more comfortable with it, just starting to take it lower and lower in the body. So if you're still only feeling most of that expansion around the ribs or just below the ribs, that's okay. Just at your own pace, as those muscles start to lengthen out, start to draw the breath and that space for the breath a little bit lower as that space opens up. Sometimes when we hold those core muscles in for a long period of time, they become short and tight, and so we have to gradually open them back up over time. So just below the belly button, if that's where you are, or wherever you are with the breath, where you feel that expansion, as low as you can. Inhale, open up away from the spine, and exhale, soften inwards. So these are our deep core muscles that work in conjunction with the diaphragm muscle. As that diaphragm muscle contracts and moves down, these deep core muscles that are like a corset for our spine open away from the spine, and then when we exhale, they soften as the diaphragm muscle relaxes and moves back up underneath the ribs. So we have this inhale, opening, lengthening, and exhale, softening. And if you can, taking it a little bit lower. So these deep core muscles run from the bottom of our ribs to the top of our pelvis. So you take it all the way down there. Inhale, open, away from the spine, and then exhale, soften. And again, just working with your own pace of breath. And just gradually opening up space for that breath, working those deep breathing muscles, diaphragm. And then eventually taking that into the pelvic floor. So you can think from the pubic bone, from the front of the pelvis to the back, or wrapping around towards the tailbone. And you can think inhale from those 2 points and lengthen down. So you can imagine the core system like a cylinder. So as the diaphragm muscle moves down, the pelvic floor also moves down. It eccentrically lengthens. So you can think inhale, lengthen. Exhale, soften, and that pelvic floor naturally recoils back up. So it's like an elastic band. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, soften. So we've got those deep core muscles. Inhale, opening away from the spine. Pelvic floor moves down, lengthens. And then everything exhales and softens back up and in. Inhale, lengthen, expand. Exhale, soften. And again, this comes with practice. So just gently creating a little bit more space each time for that breath. And then the pelvic floor muscles also go from sit bone to sit bone. So the bony parts at the bottom of the pelvis. So you can think inhale, side to side, opens. And then exhale, it softens back inwards. Inhale, open. Exhale, soften. Inhale, open away from the spine, lengthen the pelvic floor, front to back, side to side. Exhale, soften. So a couple more of these breaths. Inhale and exhale. And if you don't feel it quite that deep, again, know that that's okay. If these muscles have been held for a really long time or we haven't connected to them for a long time, it takes practice to reconnect to that breath movement. But the diaphragm and the pelvic floor kind of move in conjunction with each other. So inhale and exhale. Maybe one or two more of these breaths. And then we're going to start to release all of these muscles. If the eyes are closed, you can gently start to blink them open. If the gaze is just downward, you can start to lift the gaze. Let's just start to move a little bit. If you need to adjust the legs, if you're sitting on the floor and you're cross-legged and you want to stretch the legs out, take a moment to do that. Or you can switch the crossing of the legs. And then let's just take those shoulders up to the ears for a moment, and we'll inhale there and just hold that. And then exhale, let them roll down the back. As they roll down the back, try not to let the rib cage protrude forward. Keep the ribs stacked over the hips. So we'll inhale again, shrug the shoulders up and just hold that for a moment. And then exhale, roll the shoulders back and down. Let's do that one more time. Roll those shoulders up, big breath in, hold for a moment. And then exhale, roll them back. But let's take the arms up and just inhale, bring the arms up. And then exhale to sweep them back down. And then inhale, sweep the arms up. Just gonna move a little bit further back. And then exhale them down. And one more time, inhale up. This time take the palms forward. And as you exhale, bend the elbows and imagine sliding your hands, the backs of your hands down a wall behind you. Again, keep the rib cage stacked over the hips. So we're not pressing the chest forward. We're just pressing the hands and the shoulders back. And then we'll inhale, come back up. Let the rib cage open, let those core muscles stretch, and then exhale, soften, and just press those hands back as you bend the elbows down. Now we'll just move at our own pace of breath. So when you're ready, inhaling, stretching the core muscles as you come up, and then exhale, softening. So you just press the hands back a little bit, opening the front of the shoulders as you soften down. Inhale. And exhale. Let's do that maybe one more time. And then you can just release the arms back to the lap. So we're going to start to open up the breath laterally, starting to stretch the side of the body. So we're going to do the right side first. You're going to take your left hand across the body to the bottom of the ribs, and then the right hand to the top of the right hip. So as you breathe in, we're going to breathe into that left hand, breathing laterally into the side body, feeling the ribs open. And then as you exhale, we're going to gently kind of pull the bottom of the ribs up as we press the top of the hip down. So we're kind of stretching the side body. You don't have to exaggerate it. It's just a very kind of gentle opening as we exhale all the way. And then inhale back into those side ribs, into that left hand. And then exhale, just kind of moving the bottom of the ribs away from that top hip. Inhale, breathing into the side ribs. And then exhale, just creating a little bit of space between the bottom of the ribs and the top of the hip. Just on that right side. Let's do a few more of these breaths. Inhale, nice and wide into that left hand. And then exhale, just drawing the hands a little bit away from each other. Two more breaths here. Big breath into that side body. And then exhale, gently lifting up and down at the same time. And one more breath. And then just releasing the hands for a moment. Just notice what that right side feels like compared to the left side. Notice if there's any change, and you can even just think to yourself what that subtle change feels like. And if you haven't noticed a change yet, you can always do a couple more repetitions to create a little bit more space there. And then we'll change sides. You can take your right hand across the body to the bottom of the left ribs, and then the left hand to the top of the left hip. And then when you're ready on that inhale, breathing into the left ribs, into that right hand. And then exhale, just gently drawing the right hand up and the left hand down. Kind of easing into it, we're not really forcing or exaggerating the movement. Inhale, nice and wide. And then exhale, kind of easing into that upward and downward pressure. Inhale, nice and wide into that right hand. And then exhale, gently drawing the ribs and the hip away from each other. We'll do about 3 more breaths. Nice wide inhale. Gently drawing upward and downward as you exhale all the way out. 2 more breaths here. Feeling the breath underneath the right hand. Creating that space for the inhale. And then softening and easing into that length on the exhale. And if you feel like you need 1 or 2 more breaths there, take it. When you're ready, you can take the hands away. And then just notice if there was any change to that second side. So when you're doing this on your own, if you feel like there's one side that's tighter than the other, or you don't feel that change right away, you can spend more time on that side. So again, if you need to adjust the legs, take a moment. We're going to do just a little bit of shoulder and neck mobility before we move into some more hip and pelvis release, getting down into that pelvic floor so that when we go back to that core breath, hopefully you feel that breath a little bit deeper. But if you need to adjust the legs, take a moment. Wiggle them out because we're sitting a lot for the first part of this practice. And then when you're ready, on your next exhale, you're just going to gently drop your chin towards your chest. Just until you feel a little bit of sensation in the back of the neck. You don't have to really round the upper back. Notice that when the chin is down, if the shoulders round forward, see if you can roll them up and then roll them back and down again, keeping the ribs stacked over the hips. And then on your inhale, we're just going to gently start to lift the chin. And you're just lifting the chin until you feel the throat open. You can drop that bottom jaw again. And just think about opening that space on the inhale. And then exhale, softening even more and bringing that chin back down softly towards the heart. So inhale, lift just until you feel that throat open. And then exhale, soften the chin. Back towards the heart. So we'll just do a couple more of these. Inhale, lift, and open the throat. Drop that bottom jaw. And exhale. And maybe just 1 more of those. And we're just going to stay here for a moment. Chin down towards the heart. Again, notice if the shoulders have rounded forward or the upper back is rounding. See if you can come up a little bit taller through the spine, rib cage over the hips. Maybe rolling those shoulders back again. When you're ready, we'll just lift our gaze. So we're going to come onto our backs. If you have bolster, blocks, couch, chair, whatever you want to use, we're just going to prop our legs up a little bit. And then if you have your ball, you can grab your ball. So I'm going to use my chair. I'll lie on my back and rest my legs on my chair. So you can take a moment to come into a position where you're lying on your back with your legs supported by something. Blocks, bolster, couch cushion, couch, chair, whatever you want to use. And then we'll either be using our hand or a ball, if you have a ball handy. So releasing some of the muscles around the pelvis so that when we come back to that deep core breath, we can move the breath a little bit more into the space of the pelvis. So if you have a ball, you're going to lift your right hip off the floor. Find your sit bone, and then we're just going to move from the sit bone kind of to where your jean pocket would be. So if you don't have a ball, you can just place your hand kind of where your jean pocket would be. And then we're going to think, inhale, feel the pressure of the hand or the ball in that muscle. And then as you exhale, I want you to think about that muscle kind of melting over your ball or over your hand. And your hips might feel a little off balance because they are. So again, I think inhale, open up a little bit of space and pressure around that ball. And exhale, imagine that muscle melting over that jean pocket. So you just visualize that too. Inhale. Notice that pressure, and then exhale, let it melt. And think about easing into it. So we still have this inhale space. Exhale, soften. And if it's a little bit uncomfortable, that's a good thing. That means that you're releasing that muscle, if there's tension there for you. If that sensation doesn't feel like it's easing or melting and it's getting worse, adjust your hand or adjust the ball until you find that spot that does feel like when you're exhaling, it's releasing, like it's melting. And we'll just take a few more breaths here. So we're going to kind of add on to this, and I'll show you a couple of different options. So you can either just bring your right knee kind of in towards your chest. We're adding just a little bit more pressure into the ball or into your hand. Or if that's too much, you can take the ball or the hand out and just have that right hip back on the floor. If you have the mobility in your hip and you can externally rotate that right hip and bring the right ankle onto the left thigh into like a figure 4 stretch, you can move into that position. If that hurts the ankle or the knee at all, just keep the knee joint where it is nice and straight. That movement should be coming from the hip. So if you're feeling it in the knee or the ankle, we need to work at releasing those hip muscles a little bit more to get into that position. So if it's not there for you, just keeping that straight. And then wherever you are, still using that same sense of the breath, inhale, space, maybe feeling a little bit of pressure into that muscle, and then exhale, feeling it melt or ease around that pocket, that jean pocket. more breaths here. Inhale, space. Exhale, soften. Inhale. And feeling those ribs and those core muscles lengthen and open as well. And exhale, feeling the muscle around that jean pocket melt towards the ball, the hand, or the floor. And 2 or 3 more breaths here. And again, when you're doing this on your own, you just hold and listen to the body until you feel it release. And then when you're ready, if you're in that figure 4 stretch, you can slowly take that ankle off the thigh, and then we'll all take our leg back to our support. And you can take your ball or your hand, if you have it underneath, out, and just lower that right hip down. Again, just observe what that side feels like after that work. Maybe finding again a description word that you can think of in your own head right now, what that subtle change feels like in your body. If you had to describe it to somebody, what would that be like? And then when you're ready, we're going to gently lift the left hip and either taking the ball or the hand into the back of that jean pocket and lowering the hips down. Again, you can adjust if you need to adjust if you're not quite in the right spot. We're in the glute muscles, so we're in kind of a big muscle group here. So if you need to move around, you can move around. You'll know if you're on a pelvic bone, it won't feel very good. Or if you've hit a nerve, it'll be numb or tingly. So we want to just kind of find that dull, achy, kind of uncomfortable sensation where there's tension in the muscle. But as we use that breath, it's going to start to ease, and we're going to start to allow that muscle sink and melt towards the ball, the hand, or the floor. So again, you can think inhale, open up space. And exhale, let that muscle melt. Let it ease, let it sink, whatever word works for you. Inhale, feel the pressure. Exhale, let it melt. And when we have the legs supported, the tendency sometimes is to kind of hold the inner thighs together. Just let the legs relax. So if the knees want to kind of turn out a little bit, let them. Again, we want to think ease. We're not doing any real work here. We want to ease. We want these muscles to release. We want the fascia tissue to release so that when we take that nice deep breath in, all of these muscles work in conjunction with each other. And there's no tension or holding in anywhere that's going to restrict the breath. Because when there's tension in one area of the body, it tends to have a ripple effect in the rest of the body. So keep breathing here. Inhale. Open up the ribs, open up space in the core, maybe feeling the pressure of the hand or the ball again, and then exhale, letting that muscle melt into the hand or into the ball. And again, if you need to adjust, adjust. Listen to your body. And then if you want to, if you're ready, you can bring the left knee in a little bit. If that's too much pressure, again, you can take the hand or the ball out and just hold the knee in towards the chest. Maybe pressing into the floor. And if you have the mobility in your hip, you can externally rotate the hip, coming into that figure 4 stretch, ankle over the thigh. Or just staying at a neutral position with the knee straight in towards the chest. Again, just adjusting for your body, listening to those body cues. If the breath becomes restricted again, that means we've gone into a position that the body doesn't really like, so just adjusting for that. Inhale, space. Exhale, let that muscle melt. Let the legs kind of sink and ease into it. And just a couple more breaths here. Again, when you're doing this on your own, you can always stay longer. When you're ready, if you're in that figure four, you can slowly uncross the ankle. We'll take our leg back to the chair. If you still have a hand or a ball underneath the hip, you can lift the hip, take that ball or hand out, lower the hip back down. Again, notice the change. And if you had to describe it, what that would feel like, what that word would be. And then if it feels okay for the lower back, you can bring both knees into the chest and just do a gentle little rock, kind of side to side here. So now we're going to work the diaphragm muscle a little bit more and release the core muscles in the back body. So if it's comfortable for you, you're going to roll over onto your stomach. If you're not comfortable lying on your stomach, you can also just come back into a seated position, either seated on the floor in the chair, and just place a little bit of pressure with the hands just below the rib cage. So if you're not comfortable lying on your stomach, you can just do that as well. If you're lying on your stomach, you can stack the hands, rest the head on the hands, bend the knees. So the bottom of the feet are towards the ceiling, but the legs are somewhat relaxed. So we're not clenching, we're not gripping here. So if you're lying on your stomach, we're coming back into that deep core breath, and you're going to feel a little bit of pressure below the rib cage as you inhale. That's the diaphragm muscle because it contracts and moves down. So you'll feel that pressure as you inhale, and then think soften again as you exhale. And now you can imagine the front of the ribs melting into the floor and your abdomen kind of sinking into the floor. If you're seated, I really want you to make sure that the rib cage is over the hips and you have a string from the crown of your head and you're sitting up nice and tall. And as you inhale, you're going to allow the pressure of that diaphragm muscle in your abdomen press into the hands. So you can use the hands like a corset here and kind of resist that pressure of the diaphragm, and then exhale, let the hands soften back inwards. So wherever you are, inhale, you're going to feel a little bit of pressure in the front of the abdomen, right underneath the ribs. And then you're going to exhale and soften into the hands or into the floor. Inhale, feeling that pressure again, making that diaphragm muscle work. And then exhale, soften. A couple more breaths here. Finding your own pace of breath, and inhale, working that diaphragm muscle. You'll feel a little bit of pressure in the front body. So as you feel that pressure in the front body, also allow the breath to move laterally into the sides of the ribs and into the back body. And then exhale, soften. Melt that diaphragm muscle. Melt the front of the ribs. Inhale, a little bit of pressure. A little bit more space in the side and the back body. And exhale, soften. 2 more breaths here. you're seated, you can relax the hands. And if you're lying on your back and the legs are still up, you can relax the feet down, maybe give the hips a little bit of a wiggle. And if it's comfortable, you can press back to a child's pose. And if child's pose isn't comfortable and you're seated in a chair, you can use the hands on the thighs and just kind of gently fold forward. Make sure that that tip is coming from the pelvis and we're not rounding the spine, so you want to think hinging at the hips and then just letting the spine drape down, and you can support with the hands. And just letting those back muscles relax for a moment wherever you are. Just coming back into a more relaxed breath, an easy breath. So if you're in child's pose, you can roll yourself up. We're going to come into kind of a pinwheel action with the legs. So you can take the right leg in front with the shin kind of parallel towards the front of your mat, and then the left knee is kind of towards the heel of the right foot. And the knees are kind of at a 90-degree bend, so it's kind of like a pinwheel action. You're sitting a little bit more on that right hip. If we're sitting in a chair, we're going to sit towards the right side of the chair, and you're just going to take the left leg back a little bit and then sit a little bit more onto that right hip. So same kind of action with the legs, we're just lifted up off the floor. And then in either version, we're going to just either have the right hand on the mat or we're gripping the right side of the chair. And then we're going to open up laterally again, opening up those ribs so that the breath can also move nice and wide. So we're going to reach that left arm up, inhale, and then exhale, a little side stretch over to the right. I'm just going to pause here for a moment. And you can think about that action that we did with the hands at the beginning. So you can think, inhale, open into the top ribs, those left ribs. And then exhale, as we soften, think about the bottom of the ribs and the top of the hip lengthening away from each other. So inhale, open those ribs. And then exhale, soften, but also lengthen the side body. Let's do one more breath here. Inhale. And exhale. And you can come all the way up. So we're just going to reverse the hands. So if you're seated in the chair, you can kind of hold that back thigh. If you're sitting on the floor, you can hold onto the back ankle. And we're just going to move to the other side. So this side will feel a little bit more awkward because we're sitting on the right hip. And we're going to kind of shift a little bit more towards the left hip. We're going to reach the right arm up. Inhale. And then exhale over to the side. Just as far as you're able to. It doesn't have to be a big movement. You're just going as far as is comfortable, or we can still breathe and create that space. So we want to inhale now into the right ribs, and exhale, soften, but also lengthen. Just like we did with those hands at the beginning. Inhale, nice and wide. Exhale, soften, and lengthen through the side body. 2 more breaths here. Inhale. Nice and wide, exhale, soften and lengthen, and 1 more breath. Inhale, nice and wide into those top ribs, exhale, soften and lengthen, and then we'll come all the way back up, and then we'll just switch the legs. So the left leg is in front, the right leg is behind. If you're seated on the floor, creating that kind of pinwheel action, now we're sitting on the left hip, or the left sit bone. If you're sitting on the chair, we're moving now to the other side of the chair so that we can take that right leg behind a little bit, and then we're just sitting a little bit more into that left hip. So we're going to the left side first, so we're going to take the right arm up again, inhale, and then exhale over to the side, either holding onto the side of the chair for sitting on a chair, or that left hand is just placed on the floor and you can lean into that left hand. And we're going to inhale nice and wide into those right ribs, and then exhale. exhale, soften, but also lengthen the ribs away from the hip. So as we soften, you can think about that right hip dropping a little bit and then softening into that side stretch so that those ribs are bending a little bit more. Inhale, nice and wide. Exhale, soften and lengthen. Just one more breath on this side. And then we'll come all the way up and we'll switch sides. So if you're in the chair, just holding on to that back thigh. And if you're on the floor, you can hold on to that back ankle. And we'll reach the left arm up. Inhale, lengthen. And then exhale just over to the side, just as far as is comfortable, where you can find that nice deep breath still. And then we're going to inhale into those left ribs, nice and wide. And then exhale, soften and lengthen. Inhale, nice and wide. Exhale, soften and lengthen. 2 more times. Last breath here, nice big breath. Last exhale all the way out. And then we'll come all the way up. And then if you're seated in your chair, you can just come back to the center of your chair. And if you're seated on the floor, just coming back to a seated position. So if you're seated on the floor and you want to adjust the legs, you can take the legs wide or into like a bound ankle position, so the bottoms of the feet together and the knees are wide, and we're going to lean back on the hands. If you're seated in the chair, we're just coming towards the front of the chair. You can take the feet a little bit wider, and then take the hands towards the back of the chair, and you're going to lean back. So we're just going to start to open the front of the hips and the pelvis now. So wherever you're seated, or however you're seated, it's kind of like a cat-cow movement with the spine. So as we inhale, we're going to think about opening the ribs nice and wide, but also lifting the chest up towards the ceiling. And then as you exhale and allow all those core muscles to soften, you can gently draw the chin back towards the chest. So ribs soften and chin softens back in towards the heart. And we're going to inhale, again, open the throat, open the ribs, lift the heart. And exhale, soften, and everything just kind of bows forward. So keep moving with your breath. Wherever you are, inhale, open wide, lift the heart, open the throat, and then exhale, soften. You kind of just ease into it. You can let the spine round a little bit, and use the hands to lean back and inhale. Lift, open wide, lengthen, and exhale, soften. Let's do that one more time. Inhale. And exhale. So if you're seated in the chair, you can just bring the feet back in and sit up nice and tall. And if you're on the floor, you can come back to a cross-legged position or another seated position that is comfortable. Wherever you are sitting, we want to find those sit bones underneath us so that we're not tucking under. We want to find a nice, tall, neutral position. So a neutral pelvis, the front of the hips, and the pubic joint, or the pubic bone, it's a joint, but we know it as a pubic bone, they're in the same plane with each other. So if we're tucked under, then the top of the hips are further back than the pubic bone. So we want them on the same plane. However, we're sitting. So you can use the hands to find those targets and find that neutral position. We almost kind of want to open up the pelvic floor between the pubic bone and the tailbone. The middle of that pelvic floor should be towards the floor, your mat, or towards the chair, so that our pelvic bowl is lifted, our spine is nice and tall, and then all those core muscles are free to move. If we're tucked under, things get tight and short and contracted, and then when we breathe, they have nowhere to move. So we want to on that neutral position so those core muscles can move with the breath. So then the breath isn't restricted. So we're going to come back to that core breath that we did at the beginning and just notice if there's any change. So you can soften or close your eyes again. We'll start with the ribs. So you can inhale, feel the rib cage open, front, sides, back. Again, you can use the hands to feel that space happening. And then exhale, soften. Inhale, open the ribs wide. Exhale, soften. Inhale, open, front, sides, back. Again, like we're opening away from the spine. And then exhale, soften. And we're going to take it just below the ribs, above the belly button, filling up that inner tube. Inhale, front, sides, back. And exhale, soften. Inhale, open up, opening up those core tip muscles, opening away from the spine. And then exhale, softening inwards. Just doing that a few more times with your breath. If those muscles still feel really tight, just keep practicing there. As those muscles release, then we move deeper. So then maybe working around the belly button, around the middle of the waist. Filling up that inner tube, front, sides, back. Inhale, open. Exhale, soften. Inhale, away from the spine. Exhale, soften inward. Inhale, open away from the spine. Exhale, soften. And then once those muscles start to feel like they're moving very easily with the breath, then we move a little bit deeper. So then maybe we move below the belly button. Inhale, away from the spine. And exhale, soften. Inhale, front, sides, back. Exhale, soften. And then once those muscles start to feel like they're easily moving with the breath, we can move a little bit lower. Maybe just above the pelvis. Inhale, away from the spine. Exhale, soften. And then let's move towards the pelvic floor, so pubic bone to tailbone. We can imagine like we're inhaling those muscles towards the floor or the chair, just like the diaphragm muscle when we're lying on our stomach. We're holding the hands on the stomach. So you want to think pelvic floor towards the floor or the chair, soften as we inhale or lengthen those muscles. And then exhale, let them gently draw back up and in. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, release. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, release. And then we can think side to side, so tail or sit bone to sit bone, across the bottom of the pelvic floor. Inhale. Exhale, soften. Inhale, side to side, towards the floor, towards the chair. Exhale, release. And then see if you can feel all of that at the same time. So we inhale, we feel the expansion away from the spine, we feel the expansion and length towards the floor or the chair, and then exhale, we let all of that go. And just feel everything draw inwards. Inhale, the breath takes up space, the core muscles lengthen and expand. We're releasing tension in those deep core muscles, and then we exhale and let all that go. Inhale, lengthen, expand, exhale, release. Now let's just try holding the inhale for a moment. So inhale, and then just hold for a moment, hold that breath in, sip in a tiny bit more breath, really feel that space around the spine and feel that space through the pelvis, around the hips, even around the sacrum, the tailbone, and then exhale, let it go. Let's just do that 2 more times. So inhale, just holding it for a moment and feeling all that space that you can create. Noticing if there's any more space than when we did this at the beginning of class, and then exhale and letting that go. And one more time, inhale. Just holding for a moment, again, just observing and experiencing and noticing that space that you've created. Notice where you feel that, and then exhale, let it go. And now just come back to an easy, relaxed breath. And then if you're seated, you can roll down onto your mat. If you're sitting in the chair and you want to stay sitting in the chair, you can now lean into the back of your chair. So we're just going to get comfortable now, however you want to be, lying on your back or seated in your chair. If you're lying on your back and you want to move the hips a little bit because we've been sitting for a while, you can do some windshield wipers, just gently letting the knees and the hips move side to side, or hugging the knees into the chest and doing a little rock. If you're not wanting to lie on your back and you're sitting in the chair, you can also do those windshield wipers, just kind of moving the feet, and the knees and the hips will follow. Or you can bring one knee into the chest at a time. Maybe stretching the legs out. Just any little bit of moving to release all those muscles because we've been sitting for a while. If you want to support the legs again, and you want to put your legs up on your couch or your chair or your cushion, you're welcome to do that. So just kind of finding some space for yourself after all that release work and all that breath work that we did. Making any last little adjustments that you need to. And also just noticing any subtle changes since the beginning. So I'm just going to kind of guide you into some relaxation as we finish off. So you're just lying however you're comfortable, eyes soft or closed again. And just coming back to a natural, easy breath. So letting go of control of the breath. If you want to let a big sigh out of the mouth. And just notice if you're gripping anywhere again. If you're holding the legs in, can you let the hips fully relax? And just let the legs, maybe they want to turn out, maybe the feet want to turn out. Maybe you need to give them a little wiggle just to remind them to relax. And you can think, exhale, let go. You can imagine those glute muscles softening and melting into the floor, just like we did with the ball or the hand. And taking that release all the way down the legs. So exhale, releasing the front of the thighs, the backs of the thighs, the inner thighs, all the way to the knees. And if there's any tension around the knee joints themselves, you can think exhale, soften there. And then into the shins and the calf muscles, all the way to the ankles. Just think exhale, release. And take that into the feet, the inner and outer arches, the heels of the feet, the balls of the feet, the tops of the feet, even the toes, big toes, pinky toes. Exhale, soften. And then we'll take our awareness back up to the pelvis and the hips and the lower back. And if there's any gripping or holding there, maybe making little adjustments so that those muscles can soften. And again, on an exhale, release, let go. If there's any gripping in the abdomen, whether it's the front or the back, exhale, let all of that go. Around the ribs, the upper back, the chest, the shoulders. Exhale, release. The shoulders drop down. Back of the neck relaxed, throat soft, bottom jaw relaxed. exhale, release. Notice if you're holding any of the muscles in the face, corners of the eyes, temples, the space between the eyebrows, and exhale, let all of that go. And then even the scalp, the hair, the crown of the head. And exhale, soften everywhere, the whole body, from the crown of the head, down the back of the neck, down the spine, to the tailbone, the hips, down the legs, all the way to the feet. Exhale, just sweep any tension all the way out of the body. Let it go. And then just see if you can be busy relaxing here for a moment. Nowhere to be, nothing to do. Maybe just 3 to 5 breaths. Just busy relaxing and just noticing what everything feels like right now. Notice what the body feels like, what the breath feels like, and just passively observing, so you're not asking why or trying to change it or make any adjustments. You're just noticing. What does it feel like to be busy relaxing here? Where can I let go more? If your mind wanders, know that that's okay too. Just bring it back to the breath, to your space on your mat. And then when you're ready, you can gently begin to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Maybe gently start to deepen the breath again, creating a little bit of space for the inhales again. In the throat, the chest, the ribs, the abdomen, the pelvic floor. If it feels good and you want to reach the arms overhead, maybe stretch the toes away like you're just waking up first thing in the morning. Now feeling nice and relaxed and just ready for the rest of your evening, and then you can exhale. If you're lying down, you can hug your knees into your chest and roll over to either your right or your left side. If you're seated in a chair, you can start to sit back towards the front of your chair. If you're lying down, when you're ready, you can roll yourself up. Sitting tall but staying relaxed. We'll just close with our hands gently over the heart and then gently bowed in towards the heart again. And just taking a moment to thank yourself for this time and space. Reminding yourself it doesn't matter what it looks like, you just want to create space in the body. You want it to feel good so you can continue to create that space and you can continue to practice. May you feel your inner beauty, your grace, and your strength now radiate and reflect in your outer body, and may you carry that into the rest of your week with you. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Jasmine.